We're getting a lot of threats. A lot.
They're always trying to find a way to attach me to some train wreck.
I'm sure she is. I hope it's not my fault. I made an outcry to her that I'm willing to talk to her.
I was at a Diddy party. I was one of the party favors. But I told you, nobody tells on Diddy.
It was put upon my spirit to issue out that invitation to a conversation with Allie Carter. And ever since then, it's been a...
She said it live, on camera, in front of millions. 2 words, Jay-Z and Monster. No hesitation, no flinching. Just seconds later, the internet exploded. But here's what almost nobody talked about after. What happened behind the scenes, once the cameras stopped rolling. Lawyers got involved. A network apologized. And the interview? It got cut. Not by accident. On purpose. So what really happened in that room? And why did one of the biggest names in media suddenly say sorry? So who is this woman making these kinds of claims? Jaguar Wright isn't some random name that popped up out of nowhere. She's a real singer-songwriter. She's actually worked in the music industry for years. And here's the part that matters. She's previously worked with Jay-Z himself. Not a stranger pointing fingers from the outside. Someone who was actually in those rooms, at least at some point in her career. That's what makes this next part so interesting. Because when someone with actual industry ties starts making claims this serious, people listen differently. Whether or not the claims hold up is a different story. But her connection to the industry is exactly why a major show like Piers Morgan's decided to sit her down in the first place. And that decision? It ended up costing them more than they expected. Now let's talk about where this actually happened. Piers Morgan runs a show literally called Uncensored. The whole idea behind it? Guests say what they want. No filter. No holding back. That's the pitch. That's why people watch it. So when Jaguar Wright got invited on, it made sense. She's known for speaking her mind, no matter who's listening. Morgan himself said later that the reason they brought her on was simple. She already had a platform, and people wanted to hear what she had to say, with or without his show. But uncensored doesn't mean without consequences. And that's exactly what nobody in that studio seemed to plan for. Because what Wright was about to say wasn't just bold. It was about to bring in lawyers. Here's the moment everything changed. Sitting across from Morgan, Wright didn't hold back. She said, quote, "For 4 years I've been screaming not just Diddy, but Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters." Read that again, not just an accusation. A direct, on-camera statement, naming one of the most powerful men in music. She didn't stop there either. Wright went on to claim that Jay-Z and Beyoncé had, in her words, hundreds of victims. No hesitation. No, allegedly. Just stated, live, like fact. Now, here's what you have to understand. These are Wright's words. Her claims. Nothing here has been proven in any court, by any investigation, by anyone outside of her own statements. But once something like this airs, once it's out there, on a real platform, with a real host, it doesn't matter if it's proven. It's already moving, and it moved fast. For a few hours, it just sat there. The clip started spreading. People reacting, sharing it, arguing about it online. And on the surface, it looked like just another viral celebrity moment. Gone in a day, forgotten in a week. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. While viewers were still processing what they'd just heard, phones were already ringing. Not fan phones, not press phones, lawyer phones. Because when you say the word monster about someone with the resources Jay-Z and Beyoncé have, you don't just get a comment section reaction, you get a legal response. And it was coming faster than almost anyone expected. What happened next isn't something Piers Morgan's show does often. In fact, It's something they specifically built their whole brand around never doing. Jay-Z and Beyoncé's legal team didn't wait around. They contacted the show directly. And their message was blunt. The claims, in their words, were totally false and have no basis in fact. Think about what that means for a second. This isn't a fan account or a random blog getting a cease and desist. This is a legal team going straight to a major broadcast platform, telling them, on the record, that what just aired was false. Now here's the part that makes this different from most celebrity drama. Morgan's show didn't just issue a quiet statement and move on. They actually complied. The segment, the one with those exact claims, got pulled, cut, edited out before it could reach its full audience. For a show that built its entire identity around being uncensored, that's a massive move. It's basically the opposite of their own brand promise. So why would they do that? Why would Uncensored suddenly decide to censor something? The answer to that question is where this story gets even more interesting. Here's what actually happened. The interview footage existed. It was recorded, real, unedited in its raw form. But once the legal threat came in, the team behind the show made a decision. Pull those specific claims before they went out to the full audience. That's not normal editorial judgment. That's a legal response. A show doesn't usually cut content because of style or pacing when it comes to something this serious. They cut it because leaving it in came with real legal risk. And that tells you something important. This wasn't Piers Morgan deciding Wright's claims felt too much. This was a legal team stepping in and saying, in no uncertain terms, that airing this could cause real problems. So the footage got altered. The full, unedited version the world was supposed to see? That version didn't survive. But cutting the clip wasn't the end of it. Morgan wasn't done addressing what happened. Days later, Piers Morgan did something you almost never see a host do. He looked directly into the camera and apologized. Not a vague statement, not a tweet from his PR team. An actual, on-air apology to Jay-Z and Beyoncé. He said, quote, "Editing interviews is not something we do lightly at a show called Uncensored." Then he added something even more telling. There are legal limits on us too. Sit with that for a second. The host of a show built entirely around the idea of no filter, no censorship, just admitted, on his own platform, that legal limits forced his hand. He didn't dispute that Wright said what she said. He didn't claim it was taken out of context. He simply acknowledged that once the lawyers got involved, the claims had to go. For a show like his, that's about as big of an admission as you can get. It's not just damage control. It's a public acknowledgement that what aired crossed a real legal line. And once that apology went public, it didn't just end the story. It opened up a whole new conversation. One about Wright herself, and whether this was the first time her claims had come under this kind of scrutiny. Because here's the thing. This wasn't an isolated moment for Jaguar Wright. Journalist Touré publicly pushed back on her credibility, specifically calling out her claims about rescuing women from alleged Diddy parties. He questioned, directly, whether her statements actually held up. And it didn't stop there. In a separate interview, this time with Orlando Brown, Wright made even more unproven claims, this time pulling other celebrities into the conversation entirely. So now you've got a pattern forming. A major network apology on one side, a journalist publicly questioning her credibility on the other, and more unverified claims still coming out in different interviews after the fact. None of this proves the original claims were true. None of it proves they were false either, beyond what Jay-Z and Beyoncé's lawyers already stated. What it does show is a much bigger question underneath all of this. What happens when someone keeps making serious public claims about powerful people, over and over, across different platforms, without anything beyond their own word? That question doesn't have a clean answer, and that's exactly why this story isn't over. So where does that leave everything? A major host publicly apologizing. A legal team calling claims false. A journalist questioning credibility. And a woman who, despite all of that, keeps going back on camera, saying more. Nobody's proven the original claims true. Nobody's fully closed the book on them either. Not in a courtroom, not through any independent investigation. What actually exists, on the record, is this: a broadcast interview, a legal objection, an edit, and an apology. That's it. That's what's confirmed. Everything else, the why, the what really happened, the deeper motive behind any of it, that part is still unknown, and maybe it stays that way. But here's what's worth sitting with. In a media world full of unverified claims flying every direction, this is one of the rare moments where you can actually see the machinery behind it. The claim, the reaction, the legal pushback, the retraction, step by step, out in the open. Most celebrity claims just disappear into the noise. This one didn't. This one left a paper trail. So the real question isn't whether Jaguar Wright's claims are true. It's what happens the next time she says something like this, and whether anyone will be apologizing again.